Hello everyone, it's Matt Lawton here, and this is the Astrological Winds channel, and we're going to look at the astrological weather for the week ahead, April 27th through about May 2nd, 3rd, and not a real lot of heavy activity this week. Mainly Mercury is going to be our big actor of the week, and if you remember from last week, I talked about how Mercury squared Pluto's stationary, which was stationing retrograde, and then it was squaring Jupiter. So what's happening this week is on Monday, that is today, Mercury is going to go into Taurus. It's going to leave Aries and go into Taurus, and there'll be a switch the next 2 weeks or so in the way people's thinking and communications, their mental energy, their intellect will function for the most part, which is the things that Mercury rules. So Mercury goes into Taurus, our thought processes slow down, and they get much more careful in their consideration of making any kind of decision. So, not easy to change our minds at this point. We get very attach our decision making to the experiences that we have, and actually almost have like an emotional connection to like the way things have been with us on that kind of level of energy. So it's not really easy for someone else to come along and convince us to change our ways of thinking. And we get very into more practical decision making at this point, like really like to look at a problem from all the different angles and kind of almost see it in our mind before we actually make a decision. And definitely like a little bit more on the conservative side. So really, there's not like a strength or weakness in the sense of like traditionally for Mercury and Taurus. It's just a more careful way of thinking. So like, for most people that's fine. For people who need quicker decision making in their everyday existence, it can kind of feel frustrating and seem like people like may even be like, hey, what's wrong? They're not functioning like on a normal intellectual level, but they're just slowing their thinking down and really thinking things over. So anyway, like I said, Mercury, began a journey last weekend of hard aspects to 4 of the 5 outer planets, and on the weekend, we got it squaring Pluto stationary, going retrograde. And one thing about Pluto retrograde, had a couple people ask me about that. So the thing is, I know, retrograde, because of Mercury retrograde, has kind of become like, a negative connotation word in astrology. I think people put like negative judgments on retrograde. So, so maybe, from the level of like, oh, Pluto, this planet of transformation and evolution and, destruction at times and violence at times and birth and death and rebirth. So you hear it's going retrograde and like, but remember, the thing about the outer planets is they're a very slow mover. Like people are like, oh, I heard it's retrograde for 5 months. Well, yeah, it's retrograde for 5 months every year. And most of the outer planets are retrograde, or all the outer planets are actually retrograde for many months of the year each year when they do go retrograde. And that's because they are outer planets and they work on a much more subtle level on us than the inner planets do. So when they're in their retrograde cycle, you are not going to get the acute kind of events you get with Mercury retrograde that are messing up your everyday existence and your schedule and how things you wanted to do. That Pluto retrograde is not going to do that whatsoever. It's going to work on your psyche. It's going to work on your subconscious. It's basically saying, hey, I exposed some stuff to you over the last 7 months that you hadn't really seen before. And now you have these 5 months to like really chew it over, and it will change your psyche, your subconsciousness, and your consciousness. So that's really a very subtle, long drawn out process that is not going to be something messing up your everyday existence. It's more of a background energy. So Mercury just did that, squared Pluto stationary, and that's really when you can really, like I said last week, really feel that. Mercury squared Jupiter too. So now it's going into Taurus, and Mercury moves fast and will immediately catch up with where Saturn is at in Aquarius and square Saturn in Aquarius. And by the way, Saturn's slowing down too. It's going to go retrograde itself in about 2 weeks. We're getting into the time period where the outer planets are all going to be retrograde for a long period of time. Happens every year, so no big concerns. But yeah, so Mercury square Saturn on a Tuesday, I believe is the exact day of it. I've always thought that the Saturn-Mercury transits, when we get them on a personal level, even the tense ones, the squares and the oppositions, sometimes the conjunctions, they are like actually probably some of the most mellow outer transits that you can get. So like really the biggest issue with Mercury Saturn is just getting too narrow-minded, too like laser focused on small things and kind of losing the big picture. And definitely can get us in, like, on a psychological level, can get us into, like, what I would call the brooding mind, which, can be depressing at times, like just maybe seeing things at the glass half empty is another good way to say it. So that can definitely be an effect of it, but, like, it does have people have a tendency to shut down their communications and kind of, do the internal chewing more. But, at the same time, it gives great focus. So, like, there's a lot of, like, opportunity to really focus the mind on, like, kind of mundane tasks that need to get done in detail. So that's a really good use of that energy. But I think on a broader picture, given the situation that the world is in right now, that we're all sharing these transits together, it definitely can be a little bit depressing, I think, in the sense of, like, feeling the restrictions of, like, the lifestyle that we're all being forced under in that last couple months because of the virus and the subsequent quarantining and social distancing. So, like, basically Mercury Saturn square can make you feel lonely inside, and that, of course, is, like, being, like, manifested in the external world too because of these circumstances. So it can really build that up. And then just 2 days later, it catches up to Uranus in Taurus. So that's the fourth planet it will be aspecting in 5 days, Mercury, outer planet that is. And when Mercury and Uranus get together, it's a combination of the lower mind and the higher mind coming together. So, like, there can be, like, literally, like, lightning bolts of ingenious, insightful, perceptive ideas. And the biggest problem with Mercury Uranus is things really speed up in the mind, so it's really hard to keep up with like the download that's going on. So it's really, on one level it's almost like you should be taking notes, because you're not going to be able to remember a lot of the things that are being downloaded into your mind. It's just too much. And the other thing to be careful of is the mind is racing now. The nerves and the nervous energy is like, going up. And we can make a lot of impulsive, half thought out decisions, even though there's strokes of genius, ingenuity in our decisions. They're not well thought out. So we can make a lot of impulsive decisions during that time, and the idea behind them is great, but because you didn't, dot all the I's and cross all the T's, a lot of the details got maybe like overlooked, or you didn't have a good plan. And what ends up happening is you mess yourself up, end up in like a frenzied situation of running around in a like kind of situation, like try to patch all the holes of the stuff you didn't look into prior to that. So that's the big danger of that. It's a really, but otherwise, use of like technology, math, science, like brilliant inventiveness, things like that are definitely very accessible when Mercury and Uranus get together. Okay, and and then one other thing that kind of ties into this energy, like remember we were talking about how Pallas Athene, the one of the main 4 asteroids, and she's the daughter energy of the female archetype. She's the female warrior that is seeking balance and justice for all. So she is actually moving into Aquarius, which to me is a sign that she has affinity with, because it's like the air energy of the father-daughter archetype energy that goes on between the father and daughter, and then like the bringing in that like the intellect and the wisdom that Pallas has, that where she's trying with that sword of justice to bring like equality through society. So when she's going into Aquarius, she is a warrior for justice and equality and balance in society. So that really fits in with a lot of that other energy that we're seeing, Saturn and Aquarius starting to trigger. And so the one last thing I wanted to mention this week was on Sunday next week. And once again, it's so funny, it's like you get these weekend aspects and you're like, for a lot of us, right now, the weekend and the week has become very similar. So it's like, but anyway, Venus is squaring Neptune next Sunday. Now, just like when Mercury conjuncted Uranus, we're going to have a combination of the lower and higher minds, or intellect energy. And when I say lower and higher, I mean like Mercury is the intellect of life on Earth every day, communications, information that we're sharing. And Uranus is these bolts of ingenuity that bring new things into that intellect. So with Venus and Neptune, same thing. Lower and higher octave of literally love. So Venus is conditional love, relationships, and Neptune is unconditional love. So when the two of them come together in an aspect, those two energies combine. And that's what we're going to have next Sunday. Venus square Neptune. Now, when they get together in a square, you can have a lot of like really beautiful moments in your day, romantic type moments in your day, and But the issue with this square is it does show us where other people or even what our own ideals are about things fall short in reality. So it's kind of like a rose colored glasses aspect. We have a tendency to look at everything, and especially our relationships and other people, through like rose colored glasses, sweep issues under the rug kind of thing. So there's that, and there's a sensitivity too that, with certain people, their sensitivity can be so triggered that other people can easily tip it over and get them into feeling like almost like a discouragement or let down by their loved ones. So a very, like I said, for the most part, it's an easier hard aspect when those two planets get together, but it can bring up some disappointment with our ideals and with our relationships. All right, May is coming, and there's definitely like some shifts in the air. We will be definitely talking about Venus a lot in May. In fact, you want to talk about retrogrades. Venus going retrograde next month. Now that will be an acute energy, and I think, in the situation we're all in right now collectively, it will test our relationships very much so during that. But we'll talk about that more in my May forecast, which will be possibly coming up at the end of the week, actually. So look for that. And anybody needs readings on anything, if it's your birthday and you want to look at your next year ahead, your transit, solar return, things like that, just get in touch with me. MATTHUE823@gmail.com, and we can discuss readings and prices and things like that. I'm available for all kinds of astrological services. So anyway, this is Matt Lawton signing off from the Astrological Winds channel. I hope you have a wonderful and pleasant week. Stay healthy, stay well, take precautions, and like I said, look for the May forecast probably at the end of the week next weekend. Take care now.